from the WSIC Weather Center. It's a beautiful Friday out there today. What a way to head into the weekend.
Forgot to get mine.
Sunny skies and a high temperature getting near 78 degrees this afternoon. Okay. Heading into the evening hours, we're still going to have clear skies with an overnight low dipping to around 57. This has been your weather update from the WSIC Weather Center.
Be a part of the conversation.
We can't fix America's debt by starving people.
Have your say.
One shooting after another, and we're doing nothing to solve it?
This is WSIC News Talk Now.
Well, good Friday, everybody. This is Senator Vicky Sawyer, and I'm down one co-host. I'm hearing that he may have finally followed his dreams and is chasing Nikki Haley around the presidential campaign, and his ever political love affair with Margaret Thatcher and Nikki. I think that's where he's at. So it's just me today, but I also have a jam-packed show ready for you guys. And on the line now, we do have political analyst Joe Stewart. He's been a guest of this show very many times, and this has been a very interesting week in Raleigh. I wanted to have Joe on as someone who advocates for the independent insurance agents of North Carolina, but he also has just got a wealth of knowledge about Raleigh politics. And Joe, what a week this was in Raleigh. Is your head still spinning like mine is?
Well, Senator Sawyer, you were right there, right in the middle of it too. So you have familiarity with everything that went down. But talking to some of my longer-term colleagues who track legislation, we were hard-pressed to come up with another example of a legislative session that was as completely complex and somewhat toxic as this one has become. This may be one for the record books. Yeah,
so that makes me a little more comforted, because when I was coming back down the I-40 and thinking about what just happened, I thought maybe it was just me not being there as long as some others. So I guess misery loves company at some point. But so just for you and kind of what your thoughts are, we pretty clearly defined before Republicans versus Democrats and, those types of ideological differences. But this is kind of a new thing for folks. This is Republican on Republican violence, which those of us in the party primary system understand it very well. But at the state level, it's not necessarily as open as this. So kind of define where we are and what's going on with the Republicans.
If you go back 100 years in American political history, you saw the two major parties, Democrats and Republicans, had both conservative and liberal wings within the party. A lot of it was tied to national geography. In terms of ideological disposition, a conservative Democrat or a liberal Republican was probably a phenomena of where in the country they were. And we saw some consolidation of the ideological orientation of the parties through the Great Depression and the New Deal, where Democrats became more monolithically, consistently in support of big government, Republicans less so, more on the lower taxes and lessening the regulatory burden spectrum. And that's kind of where we've evolved to this day in terms of party identity. Now, in terms of legislative politics, we often think about the conflicts that arise between the three branches of government, the legislative, executive, and judicial. But it is true in the legislative process, irrespective of which party is in control, there typically is some healthy tension between the House and the Senate. And I think in this instance, some significant part of where we've gotten to is a result of the very different approach the two chambers take in terms of legislative matters. And quite frankly, it's further complicated by the fact that the state House Speaker, Tempore, Republican, has had some issues. He was involved in a lawsuit, an alienation of affection lawsuit, that brought a lot of attention to a more personal side of his life. And he's announced is not going to seek the speakership again. And so, of course, anytime someone in a position of leadership announces they're not coming back, it does have a tendency to alter the ultimate balance of power of things. And so those are all relative factors in how we've gotten to where we are now, notwithstanding the particular issue that's caused this division between the House and the Senate.
Yeah, I think that's really good to frame it up that way. And let's talk about the House, because, you are working with folks in the House, so you have a little bit, I think, a better idea about that. So the Senate, I joke that we're called the frozen chosen because, we all stand in line and we go and vote together, right? We fight behind doors, but we come out united. The House is a little bit different, right? The House is more like, for me, the wild, wild west. And kind of what your summation is of what type of different factions are in the House and which ones are coming down differently on these issues.
It's an interesting observation that there's sort of three criteria that I think matter a lot when you try to determine where a particular Republican House member is, one of which is, most significantly, where in the state they're from. There is a little bit of difference between Republicans on a geography basis here in North Carolina. We know that the rural parts of the state have a tendency to be a lot more singularly Republican in the voter performance. And though those legislators in the House that come from rural parts of the state have very strong Republican constituencies, and so have a tendency to produce a slightly more conservative version of Republican incumbent. The other House Republicans who come from those, what we call the shoulder counties, sort of the cusps of the metropolitan areas, places like Cabarrus County and Iredell County and Union County that have had traditional Republican performance, but the population there is a little bit more new, people that have moved from other parts of the country and increasingly from other parts of the world. And so you have that dimension within the House Republican caucus, those legislators who come from those parts of the state. And then you have a generational dynamic. A younger Republican House member has a slightly different disposition on fundamentally Republican-oriented issues than perhaps an older generation Republican would. And so we have that collision of those three planets, as it were,
right,
that produce the kind of, in some ways, a slightly more raucous, as you pointed out, a slightly more raucous process on the House side, people feeling a lot freer to express their individual position or opinion. And I think it makes the House Republican caucus a little less disciplined, maybe it's not the right word, but a little more willingness of individual Republican House members to go against what the perhaps desired intended outcome of the Republican House leadership is. And so I think in the issue of this budget with regard to the casino proposal in the package, that's what happened, is that there were a significant number of House Republicans who felt strongly about that issue and were willing to, in effect, buck their leader, the Speaker of the House, and refuse to support the proposal.
And that's where we are today. I mean, we still don't have a resolution, and that's why, for those of you who don't live in a political world in Raleigh, you probably have very good mental health, but also, but you probably don't know maybe the drama that we have all been going through inside that Raleigh belt loop. And so today's show is going to be about that, not about eventually, but how we move forward. But really, I wanted Joe to help me define the problem. And I think you're doing a great job with that. But let's now think about this. So we have these dynamics within the House caucus that are holding strong against a certain principle. And sometimes the principle may not just be gaming. Maybe it's just there isn't a speaker that they know of, or the speaker race, or what's going on. So now we have this new dynamic when you talk about the Democratic folks in the House caucus, where I know they're not just sitting there eating popcorn watching what's going on. They're watching the House fight. Have you talked to, or do you know, get a sense of what Democrats are feeling in the House, or what they think is going to happen?
Yeah, some of what has transpired in the last 72 hours is sort of a typical way that the minority party responds when there's an issue with the majority party. And in this, the Democrats see an opportunity in being able to point to the fact Republicans with supermajorities in both chambers, meaning Republican votes sufficient to override a gubernatorial veto just on a party line vote. The Democrats say even with that significant leadership advantage, the Republicans have now run 2 months past the start of the fiscal year, and they still don't have a budget, pointing to the component parts of the budget that they feel Democratic constituents would be most interested in, pay raises for school teachers, those sorts of things. We're missing out on those opportunities. Yeah. The fact that we cannot move forward with the expansion rollout on Medicaid, and we're losing money as a state. So Republicans will use those occasions, I think, to try to take a swing at Republicans. The truth is, in my opinion here, I'm not sure these issues are really going to be ripe come election in November of 2024. It's sort of usual legislative politics for one party to criticize another party, and that's kind of what's happening now. But I don't know what much more than that will come of it.
Well, Joe, thank you so much. I'm so sorry that we're out of time. I actually probably should have scheduled you for the whole hour. We could sit and pontificate the whole way through. So thank you so much for calling in, Joe. As always, we appreciate your insight.
Senator Sawyer, thank you for your service to the state, and it's always great to be on the show with you.
Thank you, sir. And we should have Brian Lewis calling in next.
The sesquicentennial celebration for the town of Huntersville, Saturday, September 23rd from 2 until 8 p.m. at Huntersville Athletic Park. Come celebrate Huntersville's 150th birthday, Saturday, September 23rd. For more info, visit huntersville.org. Not much time left for apple picking at Kerrigan Farms. The apple picking at Kerrigan Farms is a very short window. Apple picking will end September 30th. Apple picking at Kerrigan Farms, only in September. Book your experience now at kerriganfarms.com. That's kerriganfarms.com. Have an event you would like to tell people about? Yard sales, estate sales, and everything in between? Visit WSICnews.com and click on events to submit your event today.
The Renaissance Festival is back! Saturdays and Sundays, September 30th through November 19th. A non-stop outdoor family adventure. Huzzah! Tickets available online only at renfestinfo.com while supplies last.
Mention the Renaissance Festival and receive discount hotel accommodations at Hampton Inn and Suites, Huntersville and Lake Norman. Huzzah!
And now a look at your weather update from the WSIC Weather Center. It's a beautiful Friday out there today. What a way to head into the weekend. Sunny skies and a high temperature getting near 78 degrees this afternoon. Heading into the evening hours, we're still going to have clear skies with an overnight low dipping to around 57. This has been your weather update from the WSIC Weather Center.
It's We're Just Saying with North Carolina Senator Vicky Sawyer on the new 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
76 years strong, and we're still the one. WSIC. News. Talk. Now.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to We're Just Saying with... there we are. We're just saying again. Welcome back to everybody. We're just saying it again. This is your host, Senator Vicky Sawyer. And do want to say for our digital listeners, you were able to hear the end of the last segment with Joe Stewart. I encourage you to go onto YouTube or Facebook or download the podcast, and you'll be able to hear all of that. But right now, we're jumping into another subject or with someone that I actually admire. His name is Brian Lewis. He is not only the founder and entrepreneur and I try not to say lobbyist, right? Because there's always that connotation, right, Brian? But no, you are policy advocate for your clients. Isn't that how it goes? Policy advocate for your clients.
Yeah. And that's what I tell my mother when she asks what I do.
That's right. That's right. This is my friend Brian Lewis, who's a policy advocate for his clients. There we go. But not only are you work with your friend Sky David at New Frame, you also have a very popular podcast that a lot of us inside of the Raleigh bubble listen to, which is called Do Politics Better. I suggest you guys all listen to it every week. It drops on Thursdays, Brian?
It does, yes.
Yeah. So it does drop on Thursday, so I encourage you to download it. And I was listening to your podcast, and like I do every week, and I was thinking, I think our listeners here in the Charlotte area would really appreciate what it's like for a day in the life of Brian Lewis or a lot of your other coworkers that are running around in this really, I'm not going to say tumultuous, but I'm going to say interesting legislative session, especially last week. So is this all new? Is this kind of the way it's always been? Or what are your thoughts about how this session, especially this week, has been going?
Well, there's always been tension. And Senator Sawyer, thank you for letting me be on your show. I'm a longtime listener, first-time caller. Oh. So it's great. And I love that you have it as a podcast now, because now I can go back and listen on Apple or Spotify and check you out and be able to listen to some back episodes. So I do appreciate it. But, look, this tension, Senator Sawyer, this week is not the usual. Usually you guys are getting along. I heard you earlier, especially with Joe Stewart. It is unusual to see Republicans fighting each other. I mean, there's diversity within the Republican Party, and folks don't always see eye to eye. But this week kind of reminds me, Senator Sawyer, you go over to a friend's house for dinner, and you're expecting to just have a pleasant meal. You're doing your job, saying hello, and then your host start fighting with each other, and you're like, uh-oh, do I need to leave? And then someone says, well, what do you think, Brian? Am I right or wrong? And you're like, I'd like to stay out of this.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. Can I have more wine, please? But this week, look, it was extraordinary. And usually what we do, Senators, we get up in the morning, we look at the agenda for the day, we see what bills we're going to work on, we see if there's anything relevant to what our clients want or don't want. And we had all intentions of showing up on Tuesday morning, and it was going to be budget week. And we were going to roll out this $30 billion budget. And Sky was already at the building earlier in the morning. She texts me and she's like, things aren't going too well down here. I don't know if we are going to do a budget. And by the time I got there mid-morning, it was clear that the House and the Senate were in complete disagreement over what goes in the budget. And that's not unusual. What is unusual is just the tension we were feeling between the two chambers. And then the tension over on the House side between the rank and file Republicans and the Freedom Caucus. That's that 30 or so that fancy themselves more as the conservatives. And we had heard rumors that they had walked out of caucus meetings and people weren't showing up and people were reading statements in that room. So it was quite ugly.
Yeah. Now that mommy and daddy are fighting, how do you, as the oldest child, keep everything peaceful so that you can, that is true. Like what do you do? I know you're a professional, so you would never cross any lines, but how do you kind of ask like, hey, is my policy still in the budget area? Do you think it's going to go through? Meanwhile, while you're asking kindly to legislators, I'm sure you have 30 clients who are calling you every day. And how do you just manage that?
Well, one, while the giants are fighting, you don't want to get stepped on.
That's true.
So we tell our clients, like, look, we have to be patient. We don't want the message to be to the Senate or the House, hey, our budget and our line item is more important than what you're fighting over. So we don't want to get in any crosshairs. Our message inside the building is we're patient. We understand this is a process. We hope you guys work it out. But we do feel that the budget is complete, and except for this one piece. And so what we just try to do is have neutrality in what you're fighting over. Now, I do have one client. I represent the North Carolina Travel Industry Association. They're your tourism advocates. They have said, look, we kind of like casinos in these 4 counties. And that puts us in a kind of an awkward position, because certainly we want to express our clients' wishes that, hey, this would help rural tourism in those counties. But we also have this caveat: we're not working on it directly. We just want to let you know that the tourism folks certainly see the merit of it. But, again, we don't want to get in the crosshairs of anyone out there who feels passionate about casinos in a negative way. And so it's about just being honest. You always need to be honest, but don't get in the mix of kind of the tempers that are flaring. Don't validate anybody. I saw Senator Berger the other day walking into the Senate chamber. I was going to talk to him, but he looked like he was focused. And I was like, I'm just going to let Senator Berger go into the chamber and I'll just say good morning. And that's where I left it with him. I always say hello to you, Senator Sawyer, and you always give me a kind hello back. Yeah. And so that's just where I keep it.
Yeah, that's very smart because it was very tense. And that was a nice way of saying very directedly that it was intense moments around there. I am still proud of the Senate. We are there. We're doing the work that we are there for. And Senator Berger is going to be on here in just a few moments. I wasn't able to tell our guest earlier that he's calling in. Brian, you've been here before a little bit because you also served in this capacity when the Democrats were in control. So you've seen inter-party fights before. Generally, how does these things work out? Because we know eventually they always work out. So when you see this type of tension in the past, what happens? Is it slow drip? Is it just like a break overnight? How do you see that they work out?
Yeah, it has been to this level before. I was in the General Assembly when we passed the lottery back in the mid-2000s. And that Democratic caucus was divided between the liberals and more of your moderate Democrats. There used to be more moderate Democrats in the General Assembly, believe it or not. And there were huge divisions over the lottery. I remember, Senator Sawyer, there was a committee meeting for the lottery in which Democrats some Democrats wanted to take a walk on the vote. They did not want to vote for the lottery in committee. I remember Governor Easley's liaisons, it's a nice word for lobbyists, literally had their foot on the committee door so that legislators could not leave the committee room.
Wow.
They wanted them to take that vote. So we have seen politics get elevated to this level in the past. I was around for the co-speakers when we had a Democratic co-speaker and a Republican co-speaker, and that divided the Republican Party. I think what has to happen and what happened then, and I think it'll happen here, we're going to have a messy couple weeks and tensions are going to be high. I believe they're going to come to some resolution, and then it is so important, Senator Sawyer, that we are going into a hiatus and we will not see each other in an official capacity until the spring. I think that, we might need to go through the holidays, exchange some Christmas gifts, and everyone needs to go to the beach or the mountains or down there to Iredell County, get on Lake Norman and just relax and not think about politics. Time heals all wounds.
That is so right. I often say that it's kind of like, when I'm in the Republican caucus, we're like a family reunion. You got to be there because if you're not, they're going to talk about you. But that's why they only have family reunions once a year. So you need that break. You just need that break from one another. And I can imagine we only have a couple minutes left here, but I empathize with the House. Like earlier we were talking with Joe. I mean, there are 72 bodies over there. There's strong personalities. And I could only imagine what it's like for them to get all of those folks together. So I am not throwing off on the House at all. And I know you spent a lot of time over there. I'm sure you could share some of, in the last minute or so, how difficult it is to get a House that is divided to come back together.
Yeah. So you guys have 50 members in the Senate, 30 of which are Republicans. So let's compare that to the House. 120 members, of which 72 are Republicans. Just think about the math there. You have almost 2.5 times the numbers over there. And Joe is right. These districts are smaller. They're more concentrated. So you're getting that community's beliefs really concentrated in those districts. And the other thing too, Senator Sawyer, is that it's just the culture of the Senate and House. People ask me all the time what the difference between Senator Berger and Mark Basnight. Now, there are profound differences in the way they believe government, conservative versus liberal. But because of the way the chambers are structured, the Senate has always been kind of this well-oiled machine. You guys are closer caucus because there's less of you or fewer of you.
Right.
And the House has just always been kind of the wild, wild west. And I think that's what you said earlier. And it's just harder to wrangle those folks, and they come with such different views. Jim Black had the same problem with the lottery that Tempore is having right now with casinos. Mark Basnight treated the lottery in many ways the way Senator Berger is. It's like, look, we are a well-oiled machine, and we are moving as a board.
Well, thank you so much. You know, it's not a well-oiled machine, me giving you time cues. So I'm going to do better on that. I believe we are out of time, Brian, but thank you so much for providing your insight. It was really great to have you on the show, and I wish you back anytime that you'd like to come back.
Thank you, Senator Sawyer. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, sir.
Near 78 degrees this afternoon. Heading into the evening hours, we're still going to have clear skies with an overnight low dipping to around 57. This has been your weather update from the WSIC Weather Center.
Make your work easier with Eagle Rentals of Troutman and Statesville. Eagle Rentals has generators, heaters, fans, painting equipment, floor care equipment, pressure washers, lighting equipment, and lawn care equipment. Plus, Eagle Rentals has construction equipment like forklifts, bobcat loaders, backhoes, excavators, and more. Reserve online at eaglerentals.com. That's eaglerentals.com.
Grow in your faith with biblical teaching from the Word of God. Listen to Pastor Steve Pope from Calvary Baptist Church, Sunday mornings at 9 here on News Talk WSIC, or listen on demand at WSICnews.com. The Statesville Family YMCA has teamed up with the Village of Clemens to offer the 5th annual 2023 Dirty Dozen and Clemens Oktoberfest. The event takes place from 8:30 a.m. to 12 noon on Saturday, September 16th. The cost is $20 for individuals, and teams of 4 get $15 off per person. The registration price increases September 15th, so register today at ymcanwnc.org.
Call now to speak with NC Senator Vicky Sawyer at 844-STUDIO-4. It's a We're Just Saying on the new 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to this jam-packed show. We have another guest on. I want to do a quick introduction. To some, he needs no introduction, but Senator Phil Berger, the President Pro Tem of the North Carolina Senate, served in the General Assembly since 2000, actually under the Democratic majority, when he led the Republican majority in 2010. Now, since then, Senator Berger has led the General Assembly in transforming the budget from a $3 billion deficit back in 2010 to budget surpluses, all while cutting taxes, regulation, and investing in critical infrastructure across North Carolina. Senator Berger, thank you so much for your time and for calling into the show.
Thank you. And Vicki, I mean, you and I are on first name basis. So just call me Phil, please.
Okay. That's a little uncomfortable. Okay, but I'll do it. I'll do it. Senator Berger, I want to say thank you so much for calling in. And, you know, we've had a hot topic this week as what was going on with the budget. Of course, as you as the leader of the Senate, right in the middle of the throes. But a lot of folks who listen to our show, they really don't listen to the Raleigh bubble. They're not really sure what's going on. So could you communicate to them where we're at and where do you think we're going to go with this?
Sure. And as it happens every time we put a budget together, there's a process we go through, and that process involves different areas of state spending being addressed by our budget subcommittees. So, for instance, issues with the Department of Education or DPI and education, whether it's K-12, community colleges, or universities, goes through the Education Subcommittee for appropriations. But ultimately, those subcommittees meet with House counterparts, and they decide what that part of the budget should look like. Then our senior budget chairs will review all of those subcommittee recommendations, and then the senior chairs in both the House and Senate will get together. And from time to time, there are some things that aren't agreed to, and those things, the term that's used at the General Assembly, continue to get, quote, kicked up. And so things would get kicked up from a subcommittee to the full chairs. Then if the full chairs can't come to an agreement, they get kicked up to a conversation that the Speaker of the House, who's the head of the House, and I will have. So we've gone through all of that. We have 90%, 99% maybe resolved through those agreements. And there are just still a couple of things that we've not been able to reach an accommodation on. And so the Speaker and I, together with, members of our respective caucuses, including Senator Sawyer and of course Representative McNeely in Iredell County, are in the process of trying to resolve those remaining differences. And so we'll do that. The good news is, while if folks are listening to what's happening at the federal level, they talk about government shutdowns and positions not being funded and those kinds of things. In North Carolina, we have what we call a statutory continuing resolution, so that when we go into a new fiscal year, even if we've not adopted a new fiscal year budget, we continue to fund our schools, our social safety net, our law enforcement. All of those things continue to be funded, but at last year's level. So you don't have the shutdowns. You don't have folks worried about whether or not I'm working for the state, but I may not get a paycheck because the budget hadn't been done. So we are, I think, pretty close to resolving those differences, and we will continue what we've been doing for the past decade, which is balancing the budget, controlling the growth in spending in the budget, and continuing to reduce taxes and put money away for a rainy day in the event that we see an economic downturn.
Well, thank you.
Vicki, I'm sorry, that's a very long-winded response.
No, it's good because, sometimes I listen to political shows and I don't necessarily understand that the folks really know what's going on. So I feel like it's good to, as we further this conversation, because there's a lot of mischaracterization about that process at this one moment, and it has been vilified, or some people are being vilified over miscommunication. And one of those things is what I consider more of an economic development for rural areas, and something that you have been working on. Now, some people are, saying that that's just casinos, but really, when you sat down and you talked to us in the caucus and you explained the economic impact, this is a game changer for some of these rural communities that really do not have the tools to attract or maintain other types of businesses other than just these entertainment centers. And some has been labeling, I think miscorrectly, as just a casino. So could you kind of explain to us what those entertainment centers are going to be like, and how does that help those rural areas?
Sure. And while we talk a lot about how great things have been turning in North Carolina, the reality is that there are some parts of our state that continue to struggle with employment, continue to struggle with economic development, continue to struggle with the very real problem of kids go through our schools, they get educated, they go either to community college or to the university, and then the community they grew up in, there's no opportunity for them there, and so they move away. And so we're seeing that where some parts of the state just are not participating and not benefiting from the benefits. So the idea has been to look at examples of where certain kinds of economic development have actually been beneficial to some rural areas and increased job opportunity, increased tax base, and increase really the population of certain areas. And gaming is one of those things that can be at the center of that kind of development. So the proposal has been that we would authorize 3 rural districts that would have state authorized gaming. Now, there are some folks that once you say gaming, they don't want gaming in North Carolina. But the reality is we currently have gaming in North Carolina in 3 casinos. One in Cleveland County that the Catawba Indian tribe operates, and then 2 west of Asheville that the Cherokee tribe operates. And so gaming is in North Carolina. The state obviously has a state lottery that's been in place for a while. And so the thought is that we would authorize 3 gaming locations in Tier 1 counties. Those are our most depressed economically counties in the state. And it would be an economic development project that, unlike our normal economic development efforts, would require no state incentive.
Wow.
What it would require is for the developer who would commit to operating and opening one of these districts would commit to a $500 million capital investment into the facility and the creation of a minimum of 1,750 jobs at each location. So the aggregate for the 3 would be $1.5 billion investment into the state and over 5,200 new jobs. It would be the largest economic development project that we have seen in the state of North Carolina, and it would require 0 tax dollars for it to take place. Now, the districts themselves would be comprised of a hotel, a casino, but in addition to that, you would also have event venues, restaurants. You would have office space. You likely could have retail and residential space as well. So from what I have seen, jobs in a casino would be a small part of that total 1,750 total jobs. Mm-hmm. Most of the jobs would be outside of the casino, whether in the hotel or in restaurants or in retail or in other aspects.
Yeah.
And the investment into those rural communities would transform many of those communities in terms of additional tax base, additional revenue, and of course there'd be additional revenue to the state as well. So it's something that can really change the trajectory of some of our rural areas that really have not participated in the economic success that we've seen over the past decade.
Thank you for sharing with that, because that to me is so important to understand that it's not just gaming. And we only got a couple minutes left, but in that time, you also shared with us is about this idea that if a casino comes, so will this dark crime mafia, then the whole area just becomes Atlantic City. And what you're seeing and what the research has shown is that actually is not true. Is that correct? It's not that if you have a casino, you're necessarily going to increase prostitution and human trafficking and crime. In fact, you've seen quite the opposite.
No, so I've had my staff do some research on facilities that have been opened in other states and asked to look at, kind of before crime statistics and after crime statistics. Mm-hmm. The reality is, and if you think about it, the security, the cameras, the oversight that you see in a casino itself is really unlike anything you see anywhere else. So if there's something going on that is a problem, it's going to be nipped pretty quickly because of that. Beyond that, what we've seen in other communities is I would say 2 highlights. One is the before-after crime rate actually has gone down in communities that have located facilities like we're talking about. That's not just a casino, but that plus the hotel and other development.
Well, Senator
the other thing is,
Senator Berger, I hate to cut you off.
Sorry,
no, it's okay. I hate to cut you off because I'm appreciative of everything that you said. We have run out of time for this segment, and I will continue to talk about casinos, and we'll work through it together as we get a budget passed for North Carolina. Senator Berger, thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Enjoy exploring the many musical talents of others? Kane Center for the Arts in Cornelius is hosting the LKN Songwriters Showcase this Saturday. Davidson Mayor Rusty Knox will be among the performers. The LKN Songwriters Showcase this Saturday. For more info, visit canearts.org. That's CAIN arts.org. Less than 2 weeks until Huntersville Hay Day, the sesquicentennial celebration for the town of Huntersville. Saturday, September 23rd from 2 until 8 p.m. at Huntersville Athletic Park. Come celebrate Huntersville's 150th birthday. Saturday, September 23rd. For more info, visit huntersville.org. Not much time left for apple picking at Kerrigan Farms. The apple picking at Kerrigan Farms is a very short window. Apple picking will end September 30th. Apple picking at Kerrigan Farms, only in September. Book your experience now at kerriganfarms.com. That's kerriganfarms.com. Have an event you would like to tell people about? Yard sales, estate sales, and everything in between? Visit WSICnews.com and click on events to submit your event today.
The Renaissance Festival is back! Saturdays and Sundays, September 30th through November 19th. A non-stop outdoor family adventure. Huzzah! Tickets available online only at renfestinfo.com while supplies last. The Carolina Renaissance Festival is sponsored by Sunbelt Rentals. For all your equipment rental needs, equipment service guaranteed. Huzzah!
And now a look at your weather update from the WSIC Weather Center. It's a beautiful Friday out there today. What a way to head into the weekend. Sunny skies and a high temperature getting near 78 degrees this afternoon. Heading into the evening hours, we're still going to have clear skies with an overnight low dipping to around 57. This has been your weather update from the WSIC Weather Center.
Listen up, Carolinas. It's Jeep Adventure Days at the #1 Jeep and Ram dealer, Lake Norman, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. Our new dealership has the largest new Jeep inventory in the country, and we guarantee to beat any deal in the nation. I-77 exit 28, LakeNormanChrysler.com.
It's We're Just Saying with North Carolina Senator Vicky Sawyer on the new 105.9 100.7 WSIC.
Welcome back, everybody, to We're Just Saying. This is Senator Vicky Sawyer, minus her trusty co-host, who I think is off on the presidential campaign with Nikki Haley somewhere, and I'm feeling a little lonely today, so I'm going to ask you to call in and join the show. Again, you can call the studio phone number at 844-STUDIO-4, or that's 844-788-3464. It is my understanding that someone's on the line already, going to maybe talk casinos and budget, so we will see what Tom has to say. Tom, welcome to the show with Senator Vicky Sawyer.
Hello, Senator Sawyer. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. I was wondering if you had listened to what's going on, or what are your thoughts?
I haven't caught all of it. I have got a friend that called me and said you guys were talking about this, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on the issue. I've been involved in Republican politics for many years, and I can tell you that the politics we have today are not something that I enjoy. I think it's gotten absurd. We used to send our best and brightest to lead our country, and we try to do that to lead our state. And now it seems that everything is political theater and who can be the loudest and say the dumbest thing and get the most press. And I think going back to basics is something that we all need to remember. And I was certainly a Reagan Republican. And Reagan, I remember his words telling us that it's not the job of government, or that the job of government is to protect people from other people, not to protect people from themselves. Because when you get into this idea of being a nanny state and trying to make people's decisions for them, you infringe upon their freedom. And the politicians that want to solve every problem in the world and want government to be the answer, they infringe upon our basic liberty. That Republicans need to pause and look at their platform and realize you're violating your platform. If you want to tell me, and I'm not a gambler, but if you want to tell me that I don't have the right to spend my money entertaining myself at a blackjack table, you're no different than a Democrat.
Oh, Lord.
You may have good intentions, but no, that is what that is. When you allow one small group to tell others how to live, that is tyranny.
No.
That is not what we are supposed to believe in. We should have the freedom to make those decisions, whether or not you think they're good or bad. That's none of your business. You infringe upon my liberty and my rights when you want to weaponize government to tell me how to live. And I just feel like we've gotten out of hand as a party, and someone wants to say, well, you're not this or you're not that. What happened to government not telling us how to run our lives? We say that until we get in control, and then we want to use government to weaponize government to tell our neighbor how to live. I want government out of my life. I really believe in limiting the size of government. For a lot of you, you go up there and you start wanting to put government in every aspect of my life. This is my money. Stay out of it. I don't understand it.
Tom,
I don't get the logic.
Tom, I appreciate your call. Thank you so much. I'm sure your comments are going to spark a lot of other listeners. Thank you for calling into the show. Again, if you want to be a part of the show, you're welcome to call. We're just saying, I'm Senator Vicky Sawyer. Speak with me, 844-STUDIO-4. Again, that number is 844-788-3464. You just heard one folk who was talking about that, as Republicans, we are the party of less government and more freedom. And, I understand that completely. In fact, I am probably going to be buying some raffle tickets pretty soon from my local GOP men's club. And I've bought raffle tickets before from my Republican Party and my Sportsman Caucus. I've bought raffle tickets for all kinds of causes. And, in a way, that is gambling, right? It's a fundraiser for a good cause, but it's gambling, and that's what we do. So, I want to go back while we, if anyone does want to call in and have their opinion heard on this very issue. It does not come to me lightly, this decision. I am not a gambler. My husband and I really don't go to Vegas or to gamble, or, it's hard for me to make the money the first time. And maybe because it's just, I'm not good at it. I feel like every time I throw $20 into a slot machine, I don't get anything back out of it. And so maybe I've not really seen the joy in gambling, but there are a lot of folks who do. And is it with us to say that you can have a state-supported lottery, but you can't have a casino? Or maybe one particular group can have a casino, like the Cherokee or the Catawba, but yet others, like the Lumbee, are not allowed to have those? Or what do we do when we talk about this economic development for these very rural counties? Now, one of the counties that were proposed to have a casino entertainment system in is Anson County. Now, guys, Charlotteans, when we're going to the beach, and if you take Highway 74, you've been through Anson County. Think Wadesboro. And take that moment and think about Wadesboro and what is in Wadesboro. And wouldn't this be a game changer for that area? This would be, like Senator Berger said, hundreds of millions of dollars pumped into that community. That county has some of the highest tax rates that almost any other county does. Iredell County, we're blessed. We have and are in the top 10. Okay, and then we do have a caller on the line one, but let me let you know that Iredell County does have some of the lowest tax rates across North Carolina. In fact, we're in the bottom 10%. But I do want to hear from William. William, thank you for calling the show. You're on the air with Vicky Sawyer, and we're just saying.
Thank you, Vicki, because it's National Thank You Day. And I just wanted to call in to thank you for what you do, and also thank that gentleman that called before I did, Tom, because I think what he was trying to say is that we need politics and we need politicians, but they need to get back to politics and get back to politicians. That if that's a strange way of looking at it or saying it, that's the way I look at it. We need people. We need people to, whether we agree or not, is not, really the relevant answer here. We need to get back to is the business at hand. And I think that's what he was trying to say. And our world is changing. Our country is changing. And some people agree with it. Some people disagree with it. Some people have a problem with change. But nonetheless, we need to try to come together and try to compromise and work together. And that's not going on right now in Washington, D.C., as you well know, and even in our state in Raleigh. But we're trying, and it's thanks for people like you and Mr. McNeely and others. And that's what we need to look at here and just go with.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, because that is a point well taken. When do you get the personality out and get the policy in? And that's where I think we get stuck as politicians. And I think that's because a lot of us learn to believe our own press releases, lack of a better word. And, me included, you think you do everything perfectly and right. And then how dare someone who's on the other side of the aisle or the other side of the chamber come after you because you're right. Didn't you read my press release? I was right. And I think sometimes we do get too caught up in that. And I think, is that kind of what you were talking about, William?
The media. Vicki, it's the media that's the enemy here. It's the media. They blow things out of proportion. And real quick, Mitt Romney, I respect him for saying what he said the other day. If nothing else, he's saying that he's not going to run again. Whether you agree with his policies or not doesn't matter. You got to respect the man for telling us that he's wanting to step down and let somebody else come in.
William, thank you for mentioning that. And again, thank you for always being a good listener of the show and calling in. I do appreciate your call. And I do want to piggyback on what William said about Mitt Romney. I heard that this morning. I was getting ready to come into the radio show, and I thought, that is true leadership. Talking about let's pass the baton or the crown or whatever you want to call it to the next generation, those of us who are in the next group that's coming up that will be living in this world for 40 plus more years, not for only 4. And shouldn't it be those people are the ones who are going to make those decisions? Because we are the ones who live with those decisions. We do have some long-serving folks in the House, especially like Congressman McHenry, who I admire and adore. But I do know, and I joke all the time, that when I'm age 48, sometimes I get up and I walk across the room, and I forget why I walked across the room. Could you imagine at age 84 what that's like? Double my age or, triple, how could you imagine? And when you have that type of leadership and that responsibility, I want the sharpest tool in the shed who's up there able to effectively run our country. So hats off to Mitt Romney. I know not many people, especially on the Republican side of the aisle, appreciate some of his politics and stance. But for this one, I give him hats off, because that is absolutely the type of leadership that we need to see in the folks that are in there right now. We do have just a few more minutes left on the show. I do want to say this has been a wonderful show. I apologize for not hitting the brakes. I'm hitting the brakes like I should earlier and letting folks go long. But again, if you didn't and you wanted to hear the end of those conversations, make sure to check us out on YouTube or on our streaming into your iTunes or onto Facebook, and you'll be able to see in those digital formats and listen to the end of what Brian Lewis and Joe Stewart and Senator Berger had to say, because I feel like their perspectives are really unique ones and help define this problem. And what you heard from all of them is that we are going to get through this. We've been here before. This is nothing new, and we will be a better North Carolina tomorrow. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.
The new 105.9, 100.7 WSIC, Statesville, Mooresville, North Charlotte.